Hello everyone, this is Reza Durrani. The topic for today's video is building multi-screen forms or tabbed forms. Basically scenarios in which you're leveraging the form control in Power Apps and your data source has plenty of data cards or columns and you would like to create a wizard-like experience for your users so they can interact with the form control. Thank you to my subscribers for requesting this video. So let's not waste any time and get started with the video, but first, my introduction. To begin with creating tabbed forms or multi-screen forms in Power Apps, let's first look at the data source in question for this demo. We're going to leverage Microsoft Lists. Microsoft Lists is a new app as part of Microsoft 365. If you head over to Microsoft Lists and go to New List, the list that I am leveraging for the purpose of this demo is the Work Progress Tracker template list. When you select this is a template that creates columns that help us to track our work progress. Just go and click on Use Template. Give your list a name, a description, choose a color, an icon, and then go ahead and save this to any of your SharePoint sites and click Create. In my scenario, I have pushed it to my SharePoint site, and this is the list that got created once I leveraged that template. And as part of this list, I have gone ahead and added 3 items. If I select New, this list has plenty of columns to track my work progress, from the title of my work item to description to priority to dates and more. Now for the Power App, on my home screen, I have a gallery that shows me the data from that SharePoint list. And all those 3 items are available right here. On the top, we have filters to filter the gallery based on the progress of my work item. If I select completed, this will show me all my completed work items. If I select all, this will show me all my work items. So I have all my filters defined right here. Now the use case here is how we can build a form in Power Apps, but not just a form, but break the form up into multiple screens or multiple tabs. So let's see how we can go ahead and create our form in Power Apps so that the users can interact with that SharePoint list and create items or edit items directly using that form. Now the first step is I need a screen for adding my form. So I will go to New Screen and create a blank screen, rename it to Form Screen, and added my header for my screen. Now for me to go ahead and build the form so that the users can interact with my SharePoint list, I already have the connection to my SharePoint list right here in my app. I will go ahead and click on Insert, go to Forms and select the Edit Form. And this now gives me a form control that has been added to my screen. And for the properties of the form control, the first is the data source. So I will connect it to my Work Progress Tracker list. And once I do that, it will go ahead and add some of the fields in there. And I have the option of adding additional columns in here or deleting some of the columns. Now I've gone ahead and spanned the height of the form to the full height of my screen. And if I go ahead and play this app, if you notice it says there's no item to display. And the reason why it does that is because of the mode property of my form. The default mode of my form right now is edit, and I can go ahead and change this to a new form so that when I play this, it behaves as a new form. So it'll go ahead and show me all my form columns right here. Now, in this example itself, I have around 10, 12 columns as part of my SharePoint list, but there are many scenarios wherein our lists or our data tables at the back end have plenty of columns, and we end up with having either a scroll bar on the form or too many columns in one screen wherein we are kind of overwhelming the users with a lot of data that they have to put in. I would like to break my form up into smaller chunks so that when the user is entering the information, it goes through a ordered manner. So how do we go about building tabbed forms or multi-screen forms? So what we will do is we will break this form up into multiple screens So what I need to do next is, so my form control, I have changed the default mode to new because I wanted to create a new form. I'm going to default it back to edit. I will explain how I will handle the new form once I go through the demo. In my case, I want to break my form into 3 parts. The first part is going to be basic form information. I'm going to create a duplicate of this screen because I want to create my second screen. That will be the second part of my form. I'm going to call this my details form screen. And then finally, I'm going to create another copy of the same screen, and I have renamed this to additional form information. So all I'm doing right now is breaking my form up into multiple screens. Now for my form number 1, which is my basic information about my work item, what I would like to do in this case is go ahead and just select the fields that I want as part of my first form. Now in my case, for the basic information, I just want the title, the description, and the category. I don't want any of the other options that are showing up right here. Now, one way of removing them, of course, is by selecting them and clicking remove one by one. Another faster way of doing this is if I head over to the tree view right here, if you notice I have title, description, category. Those are the 3 data cards of my form that I want to keep. All the remaining ones, what I can do is just select it and start holding the control key and start selecting all the cards that you want to delete. Once you've selected all the cards, just click on the delete key on your keyboard and that's it. It goes ahead and removes all those additional columns out for me. Now, of course, I want to give the user an indication as well that this is related to the basic information of my work item. And the way I can do that is just go ahead and drop a label right here on my screen. And right here, I've gone ahead and called it basic info. Now, heading over to the next part of my form, which is my details form. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and execute the same steps. I'm just going to keep the columns that I need for the details part of my form. Now, I have already covered title, description, and category. Once again, same technique, hold control. I will remove those 3 columns. And in this case, I'm going to keep the progress, priority, start date, due date, and assigned to. Who am I assigning this task to? And this now completes the second part of my form. I will go ahead once again and drop a label here. So the user knows that this is the details part of my form. And then on my final screen, which is called additional information, I am going to go ahead and add a couple of columns, which is my notes column and my attachments column. None of them are available here. So what I can do is just go ahead and select all the fields, remove all the form fields, go to edit fields and search for my additional columns. In my case, it's notes and attachments. And for the notes column, I will make sure that it's a multi-line text. Once again, I will add my label. I'm going to call this additional information. I will go ahead and rename all the forms. I'm going to call this my basic info form. I've called my second part of my form the details form, and I have renamed my third form to additional info form. So I have 3 forms that I have created on 3 of these different screens and only included the data cards that I want as part of my process of splitting the forms up into multiple screens. Now back to the home screen of my app. I have an icon here so user can click on this and go ahead and start creating new work items. So when the user selects this, the first step of course is to navigate the user. So I will use the navigate function and take the user to my basic form because that's where the process begins, right? And if I select this and if I go ahead and play the app right now, and if I click on this icon, it's going to take me to the basic info screen. But right here, if you notice, the form control says no item to display. And the reason is because I changed the mode of my form to edit. And now I could change that form mode to new. And when I select the plus icon, it would show me the details of the form right here. But my goal here is to leverage the same screens that I created for every mode of my form, whether I'm creating a new form, whether I'm viewing data for an existing item, or I'm editing data for an existing item. So in order to create that reusable form experience, if I head back to my home screen, before navigating to my screen, I'm going to take an extra step. And what I will do right here is I will create a variable. I'm going to call this variable var form data. Okay, so this is going to contain the data associated with my form. Now, because I'm trying to create a new form, for folks who've ever used the patch function before in Power Apps, when you patch data to a data source, and when your goal is to create a new item, you use a function called defaults, wherein you use the default data of your data source. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and set this variable to that same function called defaults, and it's asking me for the source. And in my case, my source is the work progress tracker list in SharePoint. So all I've done right here is just set a variable to the defaults behavior of that list in SharePoint. Now the next step, I will go ahead and play this app and click on plus again. It will lead me to my basic info screen. But once again, it says no item to display. So what I need to do right here is if I select the form control, my default mode is still going to be edit. But if I head over to advanced and search for the item property, notice that there is no item property defined. And whenever you keep your form mode in edit or view, you have to have a specific item property associated so that Power Apps knows that it needs to display that specific item right here. Now in my case, I created a variable with the defaults property when the user clicks on the plus icon. So I'm going to go ahead and leverage that variable right here. I will put that variable right here called var form data. Now this time if I go ahead and if I play the app, you will notice that the form is actually showing up for me because it is associating it with that variable that I created first. And that variable was created with the default behavior of my form, which is like creating a new item. And that's why it's showing up as a new item form right here. Now the next step that I want to put in place is I want the user to navigate through my forms. So I will go ahead and insert an icon and I will pick the next icon right here and I will place this right here at the bottom. Now when the user selects this, I would like to navigate the user to the next part of my form. So on select, we will navigate this to the second part of my form, which is my details form screen. So I will go ahead and pick that screen name right here. And if I select play, and if I click on this, this will navigate me to my next screen. Once again, same behavior right here. For the form on this screen, I have to go to the item property and plug in that same variable that I had created. And if I play this, this form will also show up in new mode. And once again, right here, I will drop that icon to take me to the next screen. And for the on select property of this icon, I will go ahead and navigate this to my final screen, which is my additional info screen. So you get the idea here, right? If you want to break the form up into multiple parts, just create multiple screens, add your columns. We can use that variable behavior that I just showcased and we can navigate through all the screens. So if I hit next, this will take me to my final screen. And once again, as part of this screen for the item property, I need to ensure that I'm using the variable form data behavior. Now the user was able to navigate through all my screens. And if I go back to the home screen, and if I play the app and click plus, I will have that same behavior right here wherein I can go next, 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 and it will take me through all the screens. Now I will go back to my home screen and I will click plus. So this takes me to the first screen. As part of this screen, if you notice, title as a property is a required field. It's a required field in my data source. Now, what happens if the user does not fill this and click next? Will it move ahead? Yes, it will move ahead. It's going to ignore the fact that title was a required field. But I want my user to fill out all my required fields before the user moves ahead to the next part of my form. And my goal here as part of this exercise is to just query my data source once. So the user goes through the entire process. I have all that information, and in one go with one query, I want to update my data source. I don't want to keep updating and patching my data source as the user moves through every part of this form. So how do we go about doing that? Now, for the next icon here on my basic info form, there is a property called display mode. And by default, the display mode is edit. Now what I want to do is I want to check to see if the user has filled out all the mandatory fields, or at least the form in question right here is valid. So how do I check that? I can write an if condition, if the basic info form dot, now the form has a property called valid. Okay, there's a property called valid. It tells us whether the form is valid or not. If it is valid, then make the button editable. Otherwise, go ahead and disable the button. If I play the app right now, check this out. Right now, the button is disabled. That's because there's a mandatory field that has not yet been filled. And the moment I put in some data right here, notice how the next icon comes alive. That means it is respecting the fact that this form in question on this screen is valid. Now, the beauty of this technique is, even if you have other mandatory fields, because I have not included it as part of a data card for this form, it will not include that as part of its validity check. It is only going to check if the data cards that I have put as part of this form are valid or not. And in my case, I have a second mandatory field called assigned to. I actually went to the backend and made that field a mandatory field because I wanted to show you this behavior. So in this case, title is my mandatory column. The moment I fill it, this button comes alive. And when I select next, here is my second part of my form. Notice assigned to, in my case, is a mandatory column. Once again, if I want to include that same logic right here, all I have to do is go to display mode property for this form. And once again, check the validity. So if my form is valid, make the icon editable, otherwise disable it. Now, if I play this, notice it's disabled. I have to set a user as assigned to. In my case, let's say I assign the stars to Reza. The moment I pick a user, this icon comes alive. So in order for you to handle that mandatory validation per screen that you've broken your form into, you need to ensure that you add this simple logic of checking to see if that form is valid or not. Now back to my home screen again. If I go back and click plus, it takes me to my first screen, which is the basic info screen. Now there is no way for the user to go back to the previous screen. So let's go ahead and add that option right here. So I've added an icon right here of type home, and as part of the onSelect property of this icon, I've executed the back function. So if I play this app, the user now has an option right here to go back to the home screen. Now this is the first screen. And in my case, as you can see, the title is sample that I had entered. The description, category, and I have the icon which I can click because I've completed all the mandatory fields for this part of my form. I can click on next. It takes me to the next part of my form. Now, if I would like to go back to my previous screen, let's go ahead and insert another icon, which is the back icon in this case. And for this icon on select, I'm going to write the function called back. Back takes you to the previous screen. Now, if I play this and select back, it will take me to the basic info screen. Next, it takes me to the detail screen. And when I hit next, this takes me to the final screen. And of course, from this screen as well, I want to give the option for the user to go back. So I've gone ahead and added that icon. And right here on the onSelect property, I am calling the back function. So if I play this app, I can go back. So that's how I can navigate through various parts of my form. So if I go back to my home screen, and if I create a new work item, it's still maintaining the previous data that I had filled out. So the first thing is I need to ensure that I'm clearing all the data of the form every time the user selects the create work item icon. So what I need to do in this case is right before I'm setting this variable as well, I will go ahead and call a function called reset form. And all I have to do right here is give the name of my form. So I have my basic info form, my details form, and my additional info form. So I'm just executing a reset on all my three forms every time the user selects the create new item icon. So if I click this, now notice it's clearing up my form. Notice that my next button is disabled because I need to enter a title for my work item right here. And the moment I enter the title, this icon will come alive. I can go next. Once again, notice how next is disabled because I have not filled out assigned to. Let's say I select assigned to, click next. I have reached the final part of my form right here. Now, once I reach the final part of my form, I need to give a submit button so the user can go ahead and submit the data associated with this form. So I will go ahead and add a button. So I've added the button right here and I've given it the text submit. And when the user selects this button, what I would like to go ahead and do is go ahead and patch my data associated with all my forms in one go to my data source. And the way I can go ahead and do that is by executing a very simple patch function. So on select of the button, we will call the patch function. The first thing is, what's my data source? My data source is my SharePoint list. And the next step is, what is the record? And that is nothing but my variable that I created called my var form data. That's the variable which is my record. And I would also like to go ahead and push all the updates that the user has made as part of all the 3 forms that the user filled out prior to coming to the screen. So how do I go about doing that? Well, all I have to do in this case is point to my form. So my basic info form, for example, dot, there is a property called updates. That gives you all the updates that the user has made as part of that form. So I can just push all the updates right here. And guess what? I can just keep adding comma and keep adding all my different forms right here. So my basic info form was the first one, leading into the details form dot updates, leading into the additional info form dot updates. And that's all I have to do to patch my form data, my multi-screen form data into my data source. And this will go ahead and create a new item purely because when I created this variable, I created it using the defaults properties. Now, of course, when I click submit, I need a confirmation whether this patch operation has worked or not. So when I execute patch, how do I know if my operation has succeeded or failed? Well, the way you can do that is this. I've gone ahead and checked to see if the errors function associated with my data source. So remember, I just patched my data source. I'm checking to see if that last operation gives me any errors or not. If this returns an empty, that means the errors function does not contain any data. That means the last operation that I executed is successful. I can give a success message to my user and I can navigate the user back to the home screen. If this errors function returns me an error, I can once again use the notify function, specify that this is an error, and also put in the exact error message that the patch function provides. So this is how you can add logic to define whether the patch function executed successfully or not. So let's go back to the home screen now and let's go and play the app once again. And let's go ahead and create a new item. So I'm going to click on plus. It's going to ask me for the title of my item right here. I'm doing a workshop at the M365 conference. So I will say M365 conference workshop. That's my work item. I need to prep for the workshop and I'm still in the planning phase. I am going to click next. Now I need to fill out the other details of my form. So I've gone ahead and filled out the other details. I will go ahead and assign this task to me. The moment I do that, the next button comes alive. Click on next. Once I'm done with all of this, I will go ahead and click the submit button. Now, the moment I hit submit, if the patch function executes successfully, which it did, notice it'll give me the message success. And if you look at my gallery right now, which is pointing to data from my data source, here is the new line item that just got created, M365 conference workshop. Also, if I head back to my SharePoint list, of course, here's the record that got created in my backend data source. So as you can see, we can quickly create these multi-screen form experiences for our users and leverage that one single patch function to go and patch the data to our data source. Okay, so that's how I created a new item. And of course, if I click on plus again, this is going to reset my form and I can go ahead and create another item. Now what happens if I want to edit my form or if I want to view my form? Now as part of my gallery, I've added icons to view the item or edit the item. So let's see how we can reuse those same screens and those same form controls, the multi-screen forms, and utilize them for either viewing an existing record or editing an existing record. Now for creating the item, this is the formula that we wrote. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this formula right here. We will first head over to the view form record. Now, in this case, what I want to do is this. On the onSelect property, I'm just going to paste that same formula, okay? Exactly the same. The only difference is going to be when I'm using the set function right here, set var form data, instead of using defaults, okay, I'm just going to change this with this item, okay? And what is this item? This item gives me the context of the current running record. And that's all I have to do. I just changed the where form data variable to point to this item, and I can do the same exact thing for the edit form experience as well. So now if I play the app, and let's say if I select build Power App quiz, if I select this work item and select edit, it's going to straight away take me to the edit experience. And right here, I can go ahead and make changes, right? So let's say I change the title to quiz Power App. Just change the title, can hit next. I can change any other details I want. Of course, the validations are going to work. I'm going to hit next, click submit, and guess what? It is going to go ahead and update my record. And the reason why it will update the record is because I gave the context to that record. It knows it's not a new item. If I select the view item, it shows me the correct record, but if you note, the form is still in edit mode. That means I need to have another variable that tells me which mode the form needs to be in. Is it an edit mode form or is it a view mode form? And the way we can do that is if I go back to the home screen, when I select the view icon, what I would like to do right before navigating is call a function that looks like this. And I'm going to go ahead and format the text so we can focus on that function that I just added. The function's right here. I am just setting another variable to form mode.view. Okay, so I'm just setting the mode of my form in a variable right now. And when the user selects edit, what I would like to do in this case is just go ahead and set the form mode to form mode.edit. That's it. And let's not forget that we also have the create new item record. So if I go right here, I will go ahead and set that form mode variable to form mode.edit. I will not set it to new because I'm not using the new form concept whatsoever. Now, if I play the app and go to the view mode of my app, notice right here, this is showing me the basic information of my app, but my form is in edit mode. How do I utilize that variable that I just created? Go to the form associated with your screen, go to the default mode property of the form, and instead of edit, just set it to the variable that we just created called where form mode. And now if you notice, it's showing me the data in view mode. If I go back to the home screen and click edit, it's just going to show me the form data in edit mode. If I click new, it's going to show me the form data in new mode. Now, if I go back to view again, I just changed the property on my first screen. If I select next, the next screen is still in edit format. So what I need to do here is go back to the default mode property for this form control and just select the variable that we created. And I need to perform the exact same action for my last form control as well. Now, of course, the submit button does not need to show up if the form is in view mode because the user is not submitting anything. They're just viewing data. So for my submit button, I can go to the visible property. By default, it's true. What I can replace this with is where form mode is not equal to form mode dot view. That means if the form is not in view mode, only then show this button. Now, if I play the app, notice I don't see that button. I can just traverse through my form because this is a form in view mode. And if I head over to edit or if I go to the new form, I will have all the actions available for me. So this is how you can build multi-screen or multi-tabbed forms in no time whatsoever by just utilizing the simple concept that I demonstrated as part of this video. Now, in the description of this video, I will place a link to my GitHub repository where I'm sharing this app so you can actually go and try this app out in your own tenants. And all you have to do is just download the app and import the app. Of course, you need the supporting SharePoint list. And the SharePoint list is nothing but a Microsoft list that I created using the work progress tracker template. So go ahead and utilize that template. It will create all the columns for you. The only one additional step that I executed as part of my process was that the assigned to column, I actually went to the settings of this column and I made this column a required field. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then do like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so that whenever I post another video, you get notified about it immediately. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.